we have launched our 3 ISEB portals. The aim of these is to improve the administration of the common pre-tests. So for the Guardian portal, where parents and guardians register for the common pre-test, the good thing about the Guardian portal is it removes the issues that we may have had previously with multiple logins. It will also mean that in the senior school portal, the senior schools will be able to log in and see the results of each applicant, which removes the need for the test centre declaration forms that you had to send off previously. And from your perspective, in the Invigilation Centre portal, you will be able to see the list of pupils or applicants. You'll be able to approve and decline them according to your school. You will then be able to schedule the tests, and you will then be able to download your own test codes, removing that extra need of communication between the senior schools. So I'm just going to recap quickly the process for anyone that is new to the portals and is not aware how it all fits in together. First of all, there is the account creation. So the guardian creates their account and begins to add their child's details into the boxes. This is where they actually put in the personal information, date of birth, current school. They then go on to select the Invigilation Centre, that's you, and then they can add their SEND or EAL requests. At the same time, the senior school has created their account and they've entered their deadline that they need to see the tests for, and that will be relevant to you later in this presentation. And they ask the parents to go and sign up on the Guardian portal. Meanwhile, you should now have received your welcome email, but once you've logged in, you will be able to see the records of all the applicants that have requested to sit the test with you. You can approve them or you can decline them. And you can also, before you approve or decline them, you can click in to see their information if you need to know a little bit more about them before you make that decision. So once that stage is over, it's all about the sharing of the applicant ID from the Guardian perspective. They've created their account, they've got their pupil information, and they now need to share the applicant ID with the senior school. It's really important that any parents or guardians that you're in contact with do this. If they don't share it with any senior schools and the senior school doesn't upload it, you won't be able to schedule the test. So that's a really important stage. It's a quick process. They just copy it with the special copy button and they send it off to the senior schools, and the senior schools have their own ways in which they want to see it. Some of it goes directly into their admissions forms. Some people have created Google forms. So it's up to the senior school to decide how they want to receive it. And they should have already communicated this with the parents and guardians. And in most cases, they have. Once you're in your portal and you've approved your pupils, you can actually see the senior schools that have been that have uploaded the applicant ID, and you can see that by clicking into each pupil record. There's a box on the side called Senior Schools, and that's where you will be able to see the senior schools. It doesn't matter whether a parent has registered for one or multiple, you will be able to see all of the senior schools, and that's also where you can see the deadlines for the tests, but it's not the only place that you'll see the deadlines. This will then allow you to be able to make your decisions around scheduling tests. So now you have scheduled your tests. You will be able to download the access codes. You'll be able to use a diagnostic tool to make sure that the test player runs on all of your equipment. I know in the past that if there were issues around firewalls, that could be a bit of a concern on the day of the test, but we've got a tool that will enable you to check this in advance. You will then administer the test, and then you'll complete an online declaration form. No more paper PDF Word versions to send off. It will all be linked to your cohort and any individual pupils. Once you've scheduled the test, the senior schools will be able to see that you've scheduled them. And once the results are complete, they will be delivered straight to the senior school portal where they can download the results. Now, the guardians should be able to see the scheduled dates of the tests, and they will be able to see that the tests have been completed, but the results won't appear in the Guardian portal. Everyone registered as an Invigilation Centre should have received your welcome email. That was sent to the address that you registered with. and it will have come from no reply at eva.tech. If you still can't get hold of it, email us at pretests@iseb.co.uk and we will be able to reissue you with a new welcome email. Once you've received that, you'll be able to log in to the Invigilation Centre portal. And this is where at the moment we imagine most of you are going through, and that's the process of managing your applicants. You will have a list of applicants. You will be able to see their name, and some very basic information on your main applicants page. You can click on the name of the child and that will take you through to their full profile, which will give you a lot more detail about them, including their current school, their date of birth, whether they've requested for any SEND or EAL. You are an invigilation centre because you're going to invigilate the exam, so that whenever, that's the terminology that we use, just because you're an invigilation centre does not mean you have to accept applicants from outside your school if you're a school. There are some places which obviously accept private candidates or applicants, but if you are a small school and you just want to accept the pupils who are in your school, that's absolutely fine. You are under no expectation to have to invigilate for anyone else. And we make it very clear in the parent guardian portal that anyone should contact the Invigilation Centre before selecting them. So you shouldn't really get any unwarranted requests, but I do know from some people who have contacted me to say that they are getting parents that have thought, oh, that's nearby, I'll just select that one. You are able to decline these. So you just click on the respond button and then you click decline. We have suggested that in most cases it would be a good idea to contact that person to explain why you're declining them. I mean, certainly if you're only getting a few in, obviously if you get 10s in and it becomes impossible to manage, then obviously that's something that you can't do. But you are able to find the email address of the parent or guardian by clicking on that profile before you decline them to be able to get their email address to let them know. In some cases, it might be that you've got a very similar name to another school. I know for a fact that there's 2 St Andrews on the list. One of them has got a place name afterwards, but obviously it can be quite confusing for parents and they could easily select the wrong one. So it might just be a mistake. For the parents, when they log into the Guardian portal, they will be able to see that. So when they log in, they'll be able to see that you've declined them. Why some of the profiles say incomplete rather than respond? That's because until a parent or guardian has completed the SEND or EAL information, you aren't able to approve or decline them. So it's just an indicator that it might be that the parents might need a little bit of help with what documents they're uploading. In some cases, it might be that they just didn't realise that they needed to select no in order to kind of progress their registration. So thinking about what happens next, let's say you've been through all of your list and you've got your 20 applicants, your 20 pupils that you were expecting, and you are now ready to schedule the tests. So in order to schedule the tests, the portal works really well with the senior school portal because you are able to see in your list of approved applicants the earliest deadline of the senior schools to which they've applied. If the parents haven't sent their applicant ID off, or if the senior school has yet to upload the applicant ID, that will be blank. But for any that have uploaded the applicant ID, you will see the deadline in that applicant's page and it will show the earliest deadline. So if you've got a parent who selected 2 schools with 2 different deadlines, the 30th of November and the 31st of January, whilst when you click into their profile, you can see both senior schools with both deadlines. When you're in that applicant page, it will show you the earliest deadline. That means that you are able to look down your list and it will help you pinpoint the best time to schedule your tests. Obviously, you know, it's good to kind of work that, you know, with your schedule as well. But it might be that you find that in the main, you do your testing the first week in November, but you might see that 2 or 3 pupils might have an early test deadline, for example, and you might want to schedule them to have their tests a little bit earlier. So it just gives greater visibility all in one place of when that senior school deadline is. Once you've scheduled the test, and when you do this, you're given an assessment window. Now, that assessment window is designed to be quite broad, because what you want to make sure is that if any pupils were to miss that day or miss that session, that their test codes that they're going to use to log into the test still work the next day. So broadly speaking, we suggest having a day either side of when you anticipate testing. If you know that you're going to test for the first week in November, then you can set that as a whole week. You don't have to have, I'm going to do English on Monday and set that day. I'm going to do maths on Tuesday and set that day. You can just put all 4 tests into a longer window. Once you've created the test, you can then add the applicants. On the page of applicants, there's a checkbox, so you can bulk add. Bear in mind that you need to make sure that if you run over into separate pages, if you're onto page 2, page 3, you actually make sure that you add the applicants from each page into the assessment. Once you've done that, you've created your assessment, and you're taken into the screen that allows you to see the test codes, which you can download and print off. You can see the Invigilator code, and that's useful for when you do pause and resume in a test. And you will also see the link to the diagnostic tool. ISEB recommends that you try the diagnostic tool on every piece of equipment that children will be accessing the test from. So if you had 2 different rooms with 2 different sets of computers, run the diagnostic tool. The chances are that if it works on one of your computers, it will work on another, because they're all run off the same system. But the diagnostic tool runs all of the players that you need in order to access the test, and then it delivers you a report. If there's anything on there with an orange flag next to it, it means that it's been blocked by something in your system, and it needs to be whitelisted before you run the tests. That means that when you come to the test day, you've got that confidence that everything's going to run okay. It might be worth also running it in the morning of the tests as well, just in case someone's updated a piece of software somewhere, or a server or a browser, and all of a sudden it's kind of updated the firewall. So that diagnostic tool is there for reassurance that the tests will run on the day. How specific should my assessment window be? As I said, we advise that you have at least a day or a couple of days either side, just for any pupils that might, you might want to do the tests. The computer suite might suddenly become free a day early, or you've got a pupil who's unwell and they come back to school the next day. So give yourself a broad-ish assessment window. The system allows both, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. If you create one assessment window and you add all of the pupils, you'll be able to download all of the test codes in one go, and you'll also be able to do the test center declaration form at the end of the test by selecting all of those pupils and then adding the online center declaration there, so it's a bit quicker. However, if you have separate rooms, for example, if you have pupils with SEND in one room because they have a different length time, then you might want to put your SEND pupils in one assessment and other pupils in another assessment, in which case you will get 2 Invigilator codes, and you will be able to download the test codes separately as well. So it's up to you how you choose to do it. If you create an assessment, if you want to practice creating an assessment, and then you say, right, okay, we've seen it, it doesn't work, and then you can delete or edit the assessment afterwards. So don't worry about if you create one. You've got plenty of time before test window opens. Please check when you're creating the assessment and you add all the pupils that you want, that you have looked across your list. I think at the moment it only shows 10 at a time. And so that you make sure that you look across that whole list if you've got more than 10 children to add to an assessment. What's new in the tests? So one of the benefits of the new system is that there are several inbuilt accessibility features. You are able to that children are able to add a coloured overlay to see if that helps with the visibility, and they can increase and decrease font size. These features are able to be tested on the ISEB walkthrough, which is available on our website. So if you want to, we thoroughly recommend you try that out with your children to make sure they're used to the player and how it works. For all 4 tests, children can have a pen or pencil and paper to make any notes. It's not marked and it will just be thrown away at the end, but it's just for them to jot things down. We don't advise that they spend a long time writing down questions, because obviously that will, kind of take up a little bit of time, but it's absolutely fine to jot things down to try and do some working out. The reading passages, if any of you have children who previously taken the test and you've seen the old familiarisation player that we had, instead of it being on separate pages, will all be on screen and you'll be able to scroll up and down to be able to read it. Again, you can have a look at the walkthrough to practice that. This year, there will be several shorter passages rather than one long passage, and these will adapt according to the children's ability. So children don't need to have any anxiety about being presented with a text that's too hard for them. The verbal reasoning test has also been updated, whereas previously there were quite a lot of number-based questions. These will all not be in the test this year. They will all be verbal. And then finally, the length of the test. English and maths are both 40 minutes, non-verbal reasoning is 30 minutes, and verbal reasoning is 25 minutes. I think it's really important for me to say that this is not a speed test. We have calculated the length of the test based on the vast majority of children being able to complete the test.
If you go onto our website, there is an Invigilation Centre knowledge base. At last count, there were over 150 articles in that knowledge base, all of which are designed to help you. It means that you can go straight in there. You can type in the search function and there should be an article that can help you. Now, if you're reading that, you're strapped for time, you're not getting the answers that you need, you can simply go in and actually click on that knowledge base, raise a ticket. That simply means get in touch with us directly.
If parents say, well, we've definitely selected your Invigilation Centre, but it doesn't appear to be in your portal, the first thing is to check with them that they have selected the right Invigilation Centre, because like I said, there are a few on there with similar names. If that is the case and they're able to show you that they have made that request, perhaps a screenshot or something, then please do send it to us and we can investigate why it's not appearing. What that means is they've selected you as an Invigilation Centre, but they have not yet sent you their applicant ID. Those parents or guardians might just need a little prompt, perhaps, to say, we've seen you in the Invigilation Centre, please make sure you send us the applicant ID. So that it's just rounding off the process. We do have lots of articles and there's lots of information that informs parents that they do need to send that applicant ID to you, but it just seems as if they aren't always realising that closes the kind of loop of registration.
Is there a way of viewing the senior schools using the common pretest and their deadline for completion of it? This information is not always readily available on the senior schools' websites.
So you can see our list of senior schools on our website. In the common pretest section under schools, there's a downloadable list of senior schools. It doesn't, however, have the deadlines because we aren't given them by senior schools. However, in the portal, any applications to senior schools, the deadline is visible, and it's visible in 2 places. If you click on the applicant profile, you will see their list of senior schools, and underneath the name and the address of the senior school, it will tell you their deadline. And like I say, in your applicant page, once you've accepted everyone, the earliest deadline for the test, so if a pupil has a test at the end of a deadline at the end of November and a deadline at the end of January, it will pull the earliest deadline out for you so that you can see, right, I know that this child may have 5, 6, 7 applications, but the earliest test deadline is the end of November. And so that you know that if you've got it to them for the earliest deadline, you've definitely got it to them for the later deadlines. So there is definitely what we would describe, there's a couple of things going on here. If, again, they've been in the Guardian portal for a little while and it needs refreshing, the first thing we would suggest is refresh. The second thing is what the parents are using to search for you under. So we did have a really interesting issue with one school that was a Saint school, and they were ST dot. And the parents were not putting the dot in, and so therefore it wasn't bringing up the name of the school. So we are suggesting that if you are, I'm going to randomly pick one, and I hope it's not anything about favoritism. I'm going to go Wellington. So the idea being that a parent would type in WELL, pick a part of the test, a part of your school name to search for. You don't want to scroll for it because there's about 600 on there now. So it might be that they're just not picking the best sort of search term to look you up. Postcode's a good one. But yes, using a kind of very unique part of your name is possibly the best. If you're a school that starts perhaps don't start by typing actually use kind of like the main part of the name, if that makes sense.
Check.
Oh, it's instantaneous. As soon as you click on in your Invigilation Centre guide, in the useful web addresses is the link to the diagnostic tool, but it is our main bit, iseb.eva.tech/debug, DEBUG. It runs immediately. So as soon as you put that website into the browser, it will immediately give you a report. It's, kind of a couple of seconds. So I appreciate that's still 125 times a couple of seconds, but it's not minutes or 5 minutes or an hour.
The other thing that I would say is that if they are all on the same network and all in the same room, it means that if it's going to work on a few of them, it's likely to work on all of them. I think where Anna was saying use the diagnostic tool for each of those networks would be if perhaps you had some children in one room, some in another, or
some using iPads.
Yeah, somebody on an iPad, somebody on a PC. So what we would hope is that you wouldn't have to do it for all 125 devices if they were all in the same room, same network, same type of device.
And the other thing is, obviously, then when you log in to when you come to do the tests and you've got an issue, the first thing to do is obviously run that debug thing so that, it's there, on the day, but it's also useful in advance. And I'm sure your IT team will think of it as valuable. It's also really useful if any of you have had issues logging into the portals. We've had a couple of schools where they have had certain information wasn't being shown to them in the portals, and when they ran the diagnostic tool, it turned out that there was a kind of hidden firewall that was blocking one bit of information, and that was stopping some of the communication being pulled through. So if you're having issues with your portal, the diagnostic tool will run on that as well. Not at the moment. You need to put your earliest deadline. That's a really good question, and one of the things that we've looked at as a feature. The problem is at the moment the Invigilation Centre will only pull in one deadline, and if you had multiple deadlines it wouldn't know which one to pull in. So I appreciate that some of you have different deadlines for your 11 plus and your 11 and your 13 plus. I suggest using the earliest deadline, but perhaps communicating with the Invigilation Centre if actually, you're actually like, well, these pupils, don't need to sit it until, January. So, but yes, use your earliest deadline in the when you create your senior school account. Absolutely, that's what the scheduling tool will enable you to do. You can create them by pupils that have got early test deadlines and you need them to sit in, say, beginning of November, and you've got another cohort of pupils that don't need to sit it until later in November. Again, you can split by SEND or not SEND. That's entirely up to you. I would make sure that when you're creating the assessment, you give it a really clear title so that you know why it's different from the other ones. But yes, you can absolutely do that. You will only be able to assign pupils to one assessment window, though. So you can't put them in an early November and a late November. But after the deadline is passed on that, so say you set a test deadline for the first week in November and you had a pupil that was off and they were off the whole time and your deadline passed, you can then create a new test window and put that pupil in that hasn't taken the tests into that one as well. So that's one thing that I need to get clarification on the answer for. We are doing some different edge cases because obviously it very much depends how long, if the plan is at the moment that the test will be resumed as long as it's within the test window. If it runs out of the test window, then it won't be. But we've just got some final details around, because there's some cases whereby the rule doesn't work for. But I will get back to you as soon as we've got a definitive answer on that. Okay, let me just think this through. So they've the best thing for the pupils is to sit the test where they will meet the earliest deadline. So if a senior school has a deadline and assessment day, say at the 15th of January, and they want pupils to come and take the test with them on the 15th of January, but that pupil has an early test deadline, say the end of November, it's best that they get the test sat in that earlier deadline so that they don't miss the results going to the other school. So always try and sit so that your results can be seen by the school with the earliest deadline. If you click on the applicant profile, you are able to see the parent or guardian's email address. I suggest dropping them a line, I assume to say that you are not having them at your school, but if and that they need to reselect another centre, they'll be able to do that. They can log into their portal. It will say Invigilation Centre pending, and underneath it will say change centre. They'll be able to click on that and go through and change their centre. So that's great because you haven't approved them. If you're waiting because you want to approve them, again, they need to go in and they need to complete their SEND or EAL information.
Do senior schools invite parents to register for the test, or is it something that I at the prep school need to chase up?
So I think the answer to both parts is yes. It is the senior schools that invite parents to register. It's part of their admissions, and a lot of them have a kind of a standard letter that they've been sending out explaining to parents what they need to do. However, I would say that support, if you are the parents and you're in their current school and they haven't registered, and you can see that in your invigilation centre, support from you as the current school would be advantageous, because it then kind of completes that message and makes sure they know what they're doing. So invigilation centres, prep schools are not responsible for sharing this message for parents, but it's probably a good idea to support those parents in getting them registered, because the quicker they're registered and selected you as the invigilation centre, the quicker you'll be able to get on with scheduling the tests and adding the applicants to the tests. So they might be waiting from a complete point of view, in as much as they might be waiting for a senior school to upload their applicant ID. If they, when they log in, they should see once you've approved them, they will see Invigilation Centre has gone green, and on the right hand side they will see the senior school list populating. If it says that it's still incomplete, there will be a bar along the top that says add your Invigilation Centre, add your SEND information, add your EAL information. If there's no bar along the top, then it is complete. It might be that there's a box at the bottom that says this box will update once the tests are complete, but obviously we're not at that point yet. So it just might be, kind of not understanding what the view is. If they're concerned or you're concerned, again, drop us an email, Bryony, and we will investigate that. As just to let you know, if you have screenshots of any issues that you have and you send them with your email, it speeds things up by about 50%, because usually we can go, and we're able to resolve it really quickly. So please, if you do have the facility to, please send us screenshots with any issues you're having. We will be able to get back with a fix or a resolution much quicker. When parents go through their parent registration, they put in the personal information. They then select the Invigilation Centre. Now, my thoughts are what could be happening is if you are the centre they are sitting at and the senior school they are applying to, maybe in their minds they think, well, I've selected them as an invigilation centre, they must know that I'm coming, and therefore they are not sending their applicant ID to you. When they go through the process and they've added the invigilation centre, they've confirmed SEND and EAL, they have to go through a review stage of the information that they've put in and a couple of tick boxes, and then they get to their applicant profile. In their applicant profile on the left hand side, in a big purple button box, is their applicant ID, and it says you must share this applicant ID with your senior schools. My thoughts are perhaps they're thinking, I've already shared it because I am, I've selected them in the invigilation centre. So you need to get them to send your applicant ID. Now, their applicant ID is actually visible to you in the invigilation centre. So you can just say to them, are you happy for me to upload your applicant ID into the invigilation centre? If you click on their name, you will see their applicant ID. The reason we don't use that as a route is because it could be that those people have mistakenly added you as the invigilation centre, but the applicant ID is there. But what the proper route is that the parents should send it to you. However, it is visible to you. And if you know for certain that they're applying to you and you want to speed things up, I personally, from an ISEB perspective, can't see any issue with you using their applicant ID to get to see their results if that's the way that it works. But that might be something you want to discuss internally with your team and, to understand, if that works with, your parents and guardians. You've put me on the spot. I say yes, that's fine.
Oh, there we go then. Fabulous. You can, absolutely.
Basically, in a nutshell, ISEB will mediate. So if there's one senior school that says no and three senior schools that say yes, we will mediate to try and find out where the disagreement lies, see if there's anything that we can do with our access arrangements to support the decisions that are being made. And ultimately, if everyone is in agreement that the pupil should have extra time apart from one school, ISEB will work with that one school to explain what the results could have looked like without that extra time for that one school. But we're hoping that with ISEB mediating and the use of our access arrangements, we won't be in that situation. We are looking at having the functionality for a reader next year. We haven't been able to build it in this year. So yes, you will need to provide a reader, a human reader, as they're described, which I think is a funny name. I'm a human reader. Yes, you will need to provide a human reader. And yes, you will be able to use the human reader for all the 4 tests. They do not pay a fee. It is free for parents. They just log in, they create the account, they're just registering. It is the senior schools who pay for the results and who see the results. That has not changed. Parents do not pay us any money.
I'm so proud of what the team's achieved in such a short space of time. It does look fantastic, but Anna's absolutely right. We designed this with the feedback. We went to about 120 schools last year to ensure that we were doing the right thing for you. So all of that feedback, ideas for features, things you think would help, we will build in.